I was obviously, I don't know what the right word, upset, when I saw the Huawei announcement. The only good news, is there is any, is we don't have any evidence that they can manufacture 7 nanometer at scale.
On what's called the China hawk side of the equation, this is the last chance that America has to cut off China from access to advanced technology.
It's hard to become number one, but you know what's tougher? Staying at number one. Just ask Apple. They dominated the tech industry for more than a decade. Phones, tablets, laptops, you name it, Apple set the standard. But now the company is struggling. Look at their latest revenue report. From January to March, Apple made $90.8 billion. That's revenue, not profits, $90.8 billion. It was 4% down compared to last year. Most of their products are not selling. iPhone sales are down by 10%. iPad sales have fallen by 17%, and wearable sales are down by 10%. So only 2 bright spots remain. That's services like Apple TV and Apple Music, and their computer, Mac. Everything else is stalling. Do you know what's worse? The global market is not that bad. Globally, smartphone shipments are up by 10%, but iPhone sales are down 10%. So clearly, it's not an industry problem, it's an Apple problem. But why is it happening? A couple of reasons. The first is the slowdown in China. iPhone sales dropped around 8% in China, mostly because of competition. Huawei is eating into Apple's market. Huawei profits surged 560% in the same period, 560%.
Apple has been going through some hard times in the past few months. Number one, because their sales for Q1 2024 in China declined because they are facing a fierce competition from Xiaomi and Oppo and the other Chinese manufacturers. Number two, they haven't made any significant progress in AI in the past few months, beside one paper that they released on how AI can run locally on their iPhone. And number three, because they canceled their electric car project and laid off the staff. With all this, a lot of people are asking whether the stock is worth buying and what the future holds for the company. And with their earning calls that was released a few days ago, there I think it's a good idea to really dive into this and see if Apple is still worth it. Let's start with the earning calls first. What was your thought on that? I have some figures that I will talk to us from.
So the earning call was a little bit, I would say, in the middle, because investors were expecting that iPhone sales will be down, which they are, but they thought they would be down more in China. There was a beat actually on the China numbers. Instead of 11% that was being estimated by analysts, it came at minus 8%. So that means that instead of sales being down 11%, they were only down 8%. But they are still down.
Exactly.
There is a lot of question about the growth of the company, because all these companies are trading based on future growth. All these magnificent 7 companies, right? Everybody's wondering, like, is this the beginning of the end for the iPhone?
You know, I think that's a really, really good question. But based on the earning calls, right, what I would say is that Apple, they've done so many great things in the past that everybody just give them the benefit of the doubt.
That's correct.
If this was Tesla, this would be like all over the news. Tesla has done a lot of good things, but if this was Tesla, they would be being destroyed by the media. But for Apple, it's not the case. So the numbers from the earning calls, let me just share my screen so that we just go through them quickly. Basically, right, the message from this slide, and what you are seeing here, by the way, is the Q2 2023 versus Q2 2024. And basically for Apple, the financial year starts in October, so the last quarter of last year. So that's why for them is Q2. And the message here is that their revenue has decreased, as I said, they said, but their profit remained flat. On the left side, you can see the revenue broken down in 2 main categories. The product, so that's the combination of the iPhone, the Mac, the iPad, the wearables, and etc. And then they have the services as well. So what you see here is that the product revenue decreased by 10%, while the services increased by 14%. And this is mainly why Apple has been pushing this narrative around that their services is very, very important to them. It's been like the main driver of the revenue and etc. etc. But in reality, the services, they are not the biggest part of the revenue if you look at the figures. So for the gross profit, you can see it here as well. It's been 42 billion for quarter 2 2023, and the same for this quarter as well in 2024. And actually the services, their percentage actually increased quite a bit. So year on year change is like 20%, while the product is still using money. And that goes back to one thing you were saying before regarding the iPhone and the sales things that they are losing in China. Do you have anything to add to this before I
couple of things. Right after the earning calls, stock went up, and this is, in my opinion, this is mainly due to this. Apple is buying back its stock, and this is the largest buyback of stock in the US history.
Exactly.
$110 billion. Never happened before. This gave a little boost to the stock. But again, Apple used to be a $3 trillion company. It has given that place to Microsoft now, so it's still lagging. Another thing that they said in their earning call was that they are doing pretty good in China.
One thing that I want to highlight here as well is the service category, right? In the service category, this is mainly dominated by, I would call it royalty fees that Google pays to Apple for their search engine. I mean, to use the search engine as a default on the iPhone and the iPad and etc. And this is worth around like 15 to 20 billion, exactly.
20 billion. And this is literally free money that Apple is getting from Google. But here this is a little bit scary for the whole Apple stock, because the DOJ, Department of Justice in the United States, is suing, or is going to sue Apple for monopoly practices. And one of the key points from this court document is that Google is paying Apple 20 billion. So if that revenue goes away, basically it's gonna, this quarter alone, the services brought in about $23 billion. Let's say this remains flat over 4 quarters. That is about, let's say, $100 billion. If you take $20 billion out of that,
that's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money that is going away from the revenue. So this is something to keep in mind.
And it can be worse actually, because in the EU here, they have to pay some fine as well, because they are suing them for the same, not suing them, but they ask them to pay some fine because of the same similar reasons around their practices in the App Store and things around those lines.
We actually made a video about this, the case of Apple against Epic, and how Apple lost this back in Europe but won the case in the US.
This services that is potentially going to be driving their revenue and their profit is not looking good so far.
It is not. So you have to look at it like there is pressure from all angles. I'll let you dive into the numbers.
Here is basically, we are focusing now on the product category. So the product that you see there, that you saw on the previous slide that we showed. So the product category is broken down this way. And you can see clearly that this is dominated by the iPhone. That generates around 70% of the revenue of the product category. iPhone is very important, right? And if you compare the year-on-year change in the sales, so on the left chart, you see that iPhone, the sales decreased in total by 10%. And basically the only thing that increased was the Mac. And iPad, that I don't love that much, is the worst here. And the numbers show it, right? It's 17%
So
decline.
minus 17% on the iPad side. The Mac went up by 4%. And wearables, another video that we made about the metaverse and Apple's Vision Pro headsets.
Exactly.
This literally cut roughly into revenue. And wearables are actually down another 10%.
Yeah, product is not looking great neither. And if we dive into it deeper and then taking the whole revenue and breaking it down by region, what I dare said before is that China here decreased by 8%. So you can see that on the left side. And Europe and America is basically flat. And then Asia just decreased a whole lot. And the rest of the world that you see there is just the rest of the countries in Asia, right? A huge decrease in Asia in terms of Apple's revenue. This is not nice, basically. This is not looking good.
It's not looking good. And I'm going to share a bit that is going to scare you even more about this stock. Look at this. So the main competitor to Apple in China is seeing record profits, 564 in revenue growth.
Yeah.
Think about that. This is not really good. Even
really.
though Apple claimed in their earning calls that some of these numbers, some of the low numbers in China was due to the fact that there is discrepancies in the forex rate, the dollar against the Chinese renminbi or yuan. Huawei is still seeing huge profit and the sales are still going down. This is another thing to keep in mind.
So before we talk about the revenue, so here is the operating margin. So basically the profit, if you can call it that way, just simpler. And it is the same story, right? Europe and the States or the Americas are flat, while elsewhere everything is just decreasing. And one thing that we talked about before as well was what's happening, on the overall market. And this goes back to what Adair just showed you. So you can see that here we have the Q1 2023. So now it's Q1 because here we are talking about the market, and the market Q1 is from January to March. So it's comparing Q1 2023 versus Q1 2024. And you can see that Apple lost some shipment. So exactly, market share. And this is the smartphone shipment based on the branding, etc. And you see the increase in Xiaomi, the increase in Transsion as well.
Yeah.
And now
Samsung. Samsung is now the number one smartphone manufacturer in the world.
Exactly. And for me, all these things, if I want to just summarize the whole thing, is what I will say is that Apple has two categories, as we saw, right? We have the product and the services. Product is not looking great in their, I would say, their third largest market, which is China. And we really don't know how that's going to go because the competition is very fierce. And on the service front, where they are counting on, there is a lot of headwind there as well because of all the litigations and all these countries that want to prevent Apple from being, a monopoly. On both sides, there is a lot of pressure. And for me, this leads me to something very important that I've been thinking about for the past, I would say, few months, which is about life cycle of a product. And I believe that Apple has reached a stage with its iPhone, and that's the maturity stage of the iPhone. I'm not saying the iPhone is bad. What I'm saying basically is that the iPhone needs a huge refresh or a feature that's going to change everything, that's going to put them apart again. Otherwise, they've been repeating the same thing for the past 5 or 6 years now. So they need something really big. And they've been talking about that, but we don't know if that's going to happen. But I think that's the only savior for Apple.
You have to know that every June, every year, there is a worldwide developer conference at Apple. We'll cover that in June when that happened. Every analyst is looking out for the announcement. This week, there will be an announcement about iPad, but that's not the main thing. The main thing will happen in June. If there is going to be any new software, which is probably going to have to do with AI, that's going to happen at that time. Now, here is the thing. If Apple can provide, again, a platform experience for developers for AI, they can win back some of the goodwill that they've gathered over the past. But again, they have to make good promises on developers because right now, most developers don't like building on the iOS anymore. Why? Because of all the crazy rules that Apple is not really clear about. The 30% that's tax of the Apple Store. People don't like that too much. Maybe they need to reduce that. But again, that's going to put pressure on their service revenue.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But you have to give some, because the people who build the apps, the one who actually make the whole ecosystem worthwhile for people to buy the phone, is a give and take. Apple has to give a little bit here. It doesn't want to, but it has to. And we said a lot of negative things about the stock, but there are a lot of positive things as well. You have to remember that Apple has one of the best performing microprocessors in a phone and in a laptop on the market, period. Nobody can even come close. Yeah. So this is giving them an advantage. In the past, Apple wasn't really friendly with NVIDIA because they've had problems working together. This is not really helping them on the AI front and buying GPUs and stuff like that. And you will see that Apple actually didn't buy any GPUs from NVIDIA. They didn't even mention anything about NVIDIA in their earning calls. But Apple is well positioned because they have their own silicon. Now they just need to prove to us that they really have the engineering to put behind it.
Another thing that I would add to everything you said, which I agree with, is that they also have the cash and they have a lot of cash on their balance sheet. Apple has around 28 billion of cash on their balance sheet, which is a lot of money. With that, they can even speed up the process with an acquisition or a merger or anything around those lines. So we are not saying, Apple is a bad stock, but at the moment, things are not looking amazing and we need to wait till June to see what they say about the new iPhone that's going to be coming out, because that's their main product and that's where the money is coming from, basically. And based on that, we will decide decide on what the future is going to hold for
Right.
Apple stockholders.
So for investors, this will be my way of looking at the stock. This is literally a bet that you have to make now. The stock is not favored. Usually that's the best time to buy. When people are downplaying the stock, downplaying the company. Again, we just said it. This is a company that has the most cash of all the companies in the world. They just bought their stock back at $110 billion. This is a lot of cash that they could have spent on a lot of research and development, but they decided to buy stock to just keep the stock stable. Another thing I actually forgot to mention is that Warren Buffett over the weekend sold 13% of his Apple holdings. So another bad sign. This is not great. It's not great for the stock. But again, this is not financial advice. My own perspective is that these are actually the good times to buy because a lot of people are downplaying the stock. There's a lot of negativity around the stock. The stock will be undervalued. That's my view. But again, it's going to be a bet because if Apple comes out in June and doesn't give something that excites developers and financial analysts, then you are going to lose money. But for me, it's a buy.
I would say that Apple is still a very good stock. I'm adding a very to it actually. And one of the main finance guys in the world, Aswad Damodaran, recently he said that Apple is one of the most disciplined companies ever. And that's true actually.
Yes.
So if you check all the big sevens, they've been making acquisitions right and left. And Apple hasn't made any acquisition since the Beats by Dre, I believe. Long time ago. And that's why they have a lot of cash, by the way. And they are very disciplined. And that discipline, we can even link it to their car project, which some people would say the drop it is a bad thing. But if you look at the market now, you'll be like, wow, Apple was right.
Yeah.
So they are very disciplined. And according to Damodaran again, they are still worth the buy and the value is not, the stock price is not too high. So based on those, I would still say that my understanding of what's happening around the company, I would say, yeah, it's still worth the buy. But hey, I'm not a financial advisor, so this is just
this is two guys on YouTube. It's just our opinion.
Exactly.
So don't make financial decisions based on this podcast.
Exactly.
This is not
don't
financial
put your
advice.
retirement money into this one. But yeah, cool. Okay, guys. We've been working very hard on this AI-backed platform that enables individual and professional investors to query 10K, 10Q, and earning call reports. And this platform is set to revolutionize the way you invest in stock, as it is going to enhance your efficiency thanks to the AI that will quickly process and analyze the vast amount of data in these financial reports, and also highlights the trends, enabling you to make a better decision regarding your investment. And as a matter of fact, all the insight you will see in this video was gotten from this platform. So currently the platform is at a beta version and we are looking for investors to try it for free and provide us with feedback. So if you are interested, please subscribe to our Substack. The link is in the description, and thank you very much.